Hello, welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures that Outperform. Here we are, episode 29, Jerks at Work. We have a good one, the blame shifter. I'm sure you've all borne the brunt of one of these jerks at some point in your career. I've seen a lot of these. These are relatively common, no doubt about it. Let's just get right into it here. This is an incredible series if you've been following it. Amazing. We're over here in the middle column, about two-thirds of the way down, Blame Shifter. Look how many great episodes lie right ahead. We're adding new ones all the time because there are just that many jerks floating around. It's just amazing,
Yes.
you know?
We thought this was going to be a short series, but the more
I
we
know.
get into it, the more jerks we find. And it's just like, how long can we go with the series?
It's amazing. I think the first list we put together was 13 jerks.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we continue to work on it. Terry came up with another six just a month ago.
Yeah.
And we added one at the end of the last show. But they're all over. These people are real. They do exist. They're in every company. Some
Yeah.
people have multiple aspects of being a jerk. Some of them are just, one of these highly concentrated jerk types. Blame shifter is pretty common, actually. Tara, who are these people?
Yeah. Yeah. These are those people that, no matter what's going on, it's never their fault. They never take the blame. And what's worse is if this is a leader of a team who
Oh,
just kind of
the
like
worst.
throws his team under the bus at every chance he gets. That's the person that they just never, it's never their fault. They have
Yeah,
excuses for everything. They always have a reason to point the finger at somebody else. It is never me, is what they always say. It is just
yeah,
not their fault. They find any excuse, any reason. They tell themselves they haven't been given enough information, or that's not what I was told, or nobody told me that. Those kind of
yeah.
phrases that you see there on the screen, those are the things that they say because they're looking for a reason and a way to shift the blame onto somebody else. They're not the person that's going to take responsibility ever. They will never be the cause of a problem.
It's amazing how adept they are at shifting responsibility and projecting what they did onto somebody else. And oftentimes, I've seen these people putting the chess pieces in place early on. In the event something goes wrong, they've already got a storyline they're building. They're
Yeah.
so, they're just this, they're obsessed with this, and they're so good at putting Teflon all around them.
Yeah.
They're amazing. And I think the leaders are the worst. And
Yeah.
I've seen a number of these leaders. And frequently, the other side of this is they're also the credit taker in many cases.
Right.
And then they're the blame shifter. So they've got this Teflon on and they're great and they do everything. They're the worst. No
Yeah.
question about it.
Yeah,
But
and unfortunately, this person really never learns anything. They don't
no,
learn anything at all. They don't learn about whatever it is that they're working on. They don't learn any new life skills about how to accept responsibility. Like it just kind of creates a horrible work environment for everybody around them because then you feel like you constantly have to cover your butt. You're constantly
right.
taking notes and trying to figure out, okay, they're not going to shift the blame to me. How can I make sure I'm not the person that ends up taking the blame for this?
And handling them is interesting. If you have one of these people who works for you, and I've had a number of these folks work for me, what I found was, they're so sensitive to being wrong. You don't want to ever say, like, you're lying. You want to draw them out
Yeah.
and say, maybe there's more to this story. Let's dig in a little bit deeper and gather the facts. That's the way to handle them. Get the facts, finally get what happened perfectly clear, and say, you didn't really, you didn't share everything that happened here, or you're not on top of what you're doing enough to know. And eventually, once they know that they're going to get found out, they're pretty quick not to just start willy-nilly blaming everybody for everything, because now they've got reputational issues and they don't want that
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
And that's a real good way to handle them, Tara. What do you think?
Yeah, that whole blame shifting thing is about trying to maintain this spotless reputation. And so I
Yeah.
think you hit it right on the head. If you can help them see that, there's damage to your reputation, then they really start to try to figure out what they can do. They you really want them to own things. And that's
Yeah,
a slippery thing. They're very slippery with that. They don't
yeah,
want to
they
own
are.
anything. They can seem to slip and slide out of ownership of anything. But if you can get them to own things and take accountability for things, then you're really going down a good path with them.
Yeah, and I think you got to make sure that they just blaming others just isn't really acceptable.
Yeah,
That's not the way you handle things as a leader. You got to get them to understand that they take responsibility for everything that happens on their team and they protect their people. They put the umbrella up, they take care of them. That is one of the most important leadership things, is to make sure your people have that sense of psychological safety and not to steal it from them by
yeah,
either taking credit or, even worse, blaming them for stuff that may have been something they overlooked. They
yeah,
didn't do it because they're not on top of stuff. They're too worried about their image to focus on all the details. And it is awfully uncomfortable to accept blame for stuff.
yeah,
As you move up, big stuff happens occasionally, and you got to protect the people. You have
yeah,
to. You got to take responsibility, even though it might be 4 levels below you. Something happened that's really bad. You step up and say, "Look, we're going to do this better next time. We didn't have this in place as an organization. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen." But these blame shifters, they're so clever about it, and because they're always taking credit and shifting blame, they can get away with this stuff for quite a while, depending on who's running the place.
yeah. They really can, especially if they've built some high power relationships.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes you show one side, they tend to show one side of themselves to the leader that's above them, and then they show a different side to the people that are beneath them. And so
right.
it really, they can just kind of be that chameleon that shifts back and forth. And it really does take a while for people to figure out what's going on. But, it's really just not a healthy place for people to be in,
No,
and always blaming someone else for things that you should take responsibility for as an individual team member. And especially if you're a leader, you've got to just take responsibility for things that happen, even if it was not directly your fault. As a leader, if you're responsible for the team, it is your fault. And so
it
you have
is.
to take that. You have to take that. And then, not to say that you directly did something wrong, but you have to own it as a team, and then figure out, how can we keep this from happening again? How,
Right.
what
If you
things
don't,
can we put into place? And a lot of times when you just fess up and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, we made a mistake, this
we
should
made a
not have
mistake. Yeah.
happened, people understand. You're human, you're not a robot. So people expect that you're going to make mistakes. But when you shift the blame and try to cast it onto somebody else, then it, to me, it makes you look like a weak leader, especially if you're a leader. It makes you look very weak as a leader,
Oh,
and
it does.
not a very
Does.
good leader at all.
I think on this handling them what to do, the last bullet on the left, model ownership yourself. You've got to have that
Yes,
culture. You've got to model the behavior. People don't do what you say, they do what you do. And so
yes,
great executives are modeling all of these good behaviors in the organization. So this is an excellent, I think, excellent, input here on this.
yes.
And then, so what do you do here? If you're their, if they're your manager, peer, employee, so how do you handle it depending on the role you have versus them?
Yeah. If you're their manager, you really want to confirm things.
Mhm.
You got to get some things in writing. And, this is where you come up with that cover your butt. And I
Yeah, yeah,
think this kind of flows through for in any working relationship with a person like this. You want to make sure you're keeping records. You don't want to let this person have the only storyline. You want to be able to come back with the truth of what actually happened, and
got
not
to get the
just,
facts. Got to get
yeah,
the
not
facts.
just what this person has made up or is saying. This person really cannot be the story keeper. You have to make sure that you've got your clear documents of exactly what happened, what was expected, know exactly what was expected, and know exactly what happened. And you're going to focus on those solutions, not necessarily attacking the person. So you got to stay objective, but you're not going to attack the personality. You're going to attack the actual facts. So we're going to stick to the facts with this one. We're not going to go into name calling or, accusing people of anything. We're just going to stick with the facts, and the facts are A, B, C. And it's hard to argue when you just stick to the facts. When you start getting emotional and bring in personalities, that's when it gets difficult to deal with this person, because they're going to wiggle out of whatever it is that whatever happened, they're going to try to wiggle out of it.
Yeah, and look, they're good at it, but what I found is their stories, when they're blaming people and shifting blame, there's no depth to what really they're saying. They've got an excuse, but if you dig in, you quickly uncover the fact that the thing doesn't hold together. There's not a lot of meat underneath these things because they're not clever enough to craft an entire scenario which holds water. It's just not watertight, the things that they say. And I always hated working parallel to these people, be running an
Yeah.
organization and have a peer organization where that person, anything that happened, they're immediately trying to blame the other organization. Oh, they were the worst. And, executives are busy above them. They don't want to, they're not going to have a jury. There's no trial. They're not going to dig in most cases unless it's really important. But these people eventually get uncovered because their pattern of behavior becomes obvious to everybody. But in the
Yeah.
beginning, that blame shifting can be done very effectively. I think this is good, for people who want to understand how to work with people depending on the role they have. I think they should definitely dig into this.
Yeah.
And, they do a lot of collateral damage. They certainly destroy collaboration across the organization. People don't want to work with these folks. And if you're getting blamed for stuff you didn't do, you're not going to feel great about the place. They destroy good people in the process. And this is really the issue, that they do a lot of damage. They destroy a lot of very good people who are just trying to do their job and probably did an excellent job, but they're just getting leaned on by this jerk.
Yeah. People don't leave companies, they leave their managers.
Yeah,
So
they do.
they're leaving the people that they're working with. It's usually something there when you start seeing high turnover rates in a particular group. You have to
Yeah,
investigate that as a
big
leader,
time.
because there's something going on. There's a reason that people are leaving, where, you just got this revolving door of people coming in and going out. You really have to investigate that as a leader. You can't let that continue, because people are getting damaged in the process.
Well, and I must say, I found that, culture surveys, employee engagement surveys done
Mhm.
right do bring up a lot of very valuable information. Unfortunately, few organizations take action. They don't
Yeah.
really deal with it. They do it as a check the box item, right? Oh, it's done. We did it. They don't do anything. But you can sniff out these kind of cultural problems in these surveys because you'll see people are very unhappy. They
Yeah.
create, at the end of the day, these folks create a huge amount of collateral damage, and they either have to be coached into being, a better leader, better performer, and learn to take ownership and accountability, which can be hard. It's a little scary sometimes when big things go wrong to say, no, look, we let that fell through the cracks. That's our fault. We're going to patch that up. People don't like doing that, but I think you got to get on top of this. You got to know your organization, your culture. You got to put the norms in. You got to make sure these people can't survive in your culture.
Yeah.
And so now we have another side of this, which is, I think, so good that these are paired back to back.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going over the credit taker. Sometimes these are two sides of one personality. Sometimes they're just a credit taker. But I found these people even worse than the blame shifters, personally.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
really
it's so
gross.
frustrating
Ugh.
to know that somebody has taken your work and they're taking it as their own. It
Oh,
is
it's
just
the
the most
worst.
frustrating thing.
Absolutely the worst. But anyway, we're here every Wednesday, 3 o'clock, with another great episode. I hope you're loving the series because, these are real jerky personalities. And it's so great to be able to get in here and talk about it and share it because Terry and I have worked with so many of these people and they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Sometimes minor, they play a minor role. Sometimes they're, the lead actor, who own these types of jerky behaviors. But, hope you could join us next Wednesday for the credit taker. Hope to see you then.